Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Hunter, the Outreach Coordinator for the Advancing as a Profession project. I want to thank you all for taking a few minutes to join me and learn about the consensus document on professional compensation. You'll learn what Vermont's early childhood education workforce agrees upon, what your concerns are, and additionally, the recommendations have been put forth by Vermont's task force. The first thing to know is that Vermont's workforce is in near complete agreement with all compensation recommendations put forth in the unifying framework. The task force found that there was consensus. In fact, that consensus was between 96 and 100% agreement on each of the recommendations. That professional compensation will be comparable for early childhood educators with comparable qualification experience, job responsibilities, regardless of their setting, include provisions for an adequate benefits package, increase in proportion with increased preparation and competency, not be differentiated on the basis of the ages of the children served. That to begin with, we look to the public schools as a starting place to figure out comparable compensation. There will be new dedicated funding streams targeted toward the preparation and compensation of the workforce, as well as shifts in how we are currently spending funds. That there will be a need to have the necessary supports to meet the requirements for being an early childhood educator. And lastly, that establishing clarity around who early childhood educators are and what they will be accountable for creates a stronger argument for sustained and significant public investments. Members of the workforce asked questions and raised concerns about 4 areas in particular, even as they agreed with the recommendations generally. The task force returned to the unifying framework for guidance. I'll raise each of these concerns, and a member of our task force will share their response. With the differences, how do we look to public schools as a standard of comparability in establishing professional compensation for early childhood educators?
The end goal must be fair and just compensation for all early childhood educators across all settings. We highlight these words in the unifying framework so that they are not lost in our understanding of the recommendations to look to public schools. A minimum benchmark, assuming comparable qualifications and experience, and assuming comparable job responsibilities. We acknowledge the differences in hours, calendar, and responsibilities that exist between public schools and other ECE settings. Yet we see looking to public schools as a starting place, particularly as some early educators are already working in that setting. A few states have begun drafting wage scales that are aligned with the unifying framework recommendations. We can learn from their work.
As we establish professional compensation, how will the experience, education, and expertise of the existing workforce be valued?
Some of us continue to be anxious about where we will fit in the profession and how we will get there. The sooner we have details on what the bridge looks like, the better. Many of us want to ensure that expertise developed from years of experience is valued, that there is a process to figure that into the mix of qualifications along with education. Some of us are worried about the time and money needed to get additional education. The passage of H171 and expansion of comprehensive TEACH scholarships begin to address this.
What will the benefits package look like and how will it work?
While benefits packages will vary, we advocate for this. To be adequate, a benefits package must be meaningful and positively impact an educator's individual and family members' health and well-being. To be adequate, a benefits package must include medical insurance, paid leave, and retirement. Negotiations should be aimed at meeting individuals' needs. In the design of a wage scale and benefits packages, attention must be given to the benefits cliff. In fact, the improvement of educators' compensation should put educators in the position of no longer needing public benefits.
Where will the funding for increased compensation come from?
For the existing workforce, ongoing anxiety can make it feel hard to trust this process. A draft brief on compensation NACE recently shared with us gives us some reassurance about where the recommendations are headed. We'll share that in full as soon as we can. We note that employers and owners, including sole proprietors, cannot be held responsible for providing professional compensation unless the public funding is provided. We note the impact COVID-19 has had on public perception and public dialogue regarding the need for increased public funding. Since our workforce outreach on compensation ended in March of 2020, there has been significant movement in the realm of public funding, with the passage of H171 in Vermont and funding bills at the federal level. This is promising and must be expanded to address compensation in a sustainable way. In Vermont, we applaud the recent formation of a study group to determine the true cost of care. This work will set the stage for the amount of funding necessary to address compensation, along with other supports and resources for the early childhood education profession.
Finally, the sustaining workforce support for recommendations around professional compensation will depend on how everything unfolds. Planning and the details will matter going forward. The task force recommends to be workforce-led, that the voices of the current early childhood education workforce be central in implementation and design, so that our questions and concerns inform planning. That design moves forward on a wage scale, including an approach to benefits package. That design work begins on the transition, or what we refer to as the bridge, that factors in the experience and professional growth of the existing workforce in determining a professional designation with accompanying wage level. For a trustworthy process that we can continue effective workforce outreach and engagement, provide updated information, and build workforce leadership. If you would like more information, click the link in the text just below the video. Thank you for staying engaged in the work to advance early childhood education as a profession in Vermont.